Control Your Narrative is easily the weirdest wrestling company that is around right now, and it really begs the question with their style of shows and how they present themselves is how long can this actually last? Like, how long can we just watch this go on for, and how long can they convince themselves that it's good for? Because I feel like right now, we're already witnessing the first nails in the coffin for Control Your Narrative, and Control Your Narrative is kind of already dying, and it might only just be a short-term project, and I'll talk about all this and more later on in the video. But Control Your Narrative, just to recap for anyone who somehow is watching this channel and doesn't know, like you're watching the Control Your Narrative guy, and you don't know what Control Your Narrative is. Control Your Narrative is a wrestling company that was started up by EC3 and later on Adam Scherr. It started off as Free the Narrative, and it was just some cinematic matches that EC3 was doing on his Impact Wrestling return, and eventually turned into a stable that he formed in Ring of Honor. After Ring of Honor ended, he decided to start his own company where he would run Free the Narrative shows, and then eventually he would start Control Your Narrative, which is an entire promotion in itself with a roster, shows they put on, and everything. Well, I say everything, not everything, because there isn't referees, there isn't titles, a lot of the show's broadcast don't have fans in the building, and yeah, you get the idea. We have watched a few of the shows on the channel now, and if you've watched any of those videos, which you absolutely should by the way, there's 3 of them now, you know that Control Your Narrative is maybe the weirdest and probably worst presented wrestling company out there today. The company and the shows have basically just been relentlessly mocked online, leading to EC3 and other roster members heavily speaking out on Twitter, in interviews, and really just digging themselves into deeper holes with some of the things that they said. And many people believe that Control Your Narrative is just a vanity project for EC3 and Adam Scherr to run and kind of put themselves over because they weren't treated that great in the WWE, and that is something that they constantly let you know in Control Your Narrative. They have a roster full of people like Aries, Weston Blake, them two obviously, and the constant theme of the show that they constantly hammer home is that everyone on the roster was underutilized where they once were. Control Your Narrative then announced they have a TV deal, which, to be honest, was seen as pretty surprising and quite a good move from them. However, you would soon find out, and as we sit here in August 2020 and the TV deal was meant to take place in April, the TV deal was with Pro Wrestling TV, which is an app that displays 24/7 wrestling. It's actually a really cool app. I would check it out if I was you. There's some good stuff on there. However, for Control Your Narrative to say they have a TV deal was a bit misleading, because I thought the implication there was that they're saying they have a weekly show, or just a show, or any product that is going to air on Pro Wrestling TV. And if you're to go onto Pro Wrestling TV, there's like nothing on Control Your Narrative. They have the Free the Narrative shows, and they have the Control Your Narrative Awakening show. That's 3 shows in total you can watch, and there's not any sort of TV show. You know, I was thinking there was going to be like an NWA Power almost for Control Your Narrative on Pro Wrestling TV, but there just isn't. So it was a bit misleading. Control Your Narrative are not releasing anything. I don't know what they're actually doing. They are going on a big tour over autumn/fall, where they're going to over 24 cities, I believe. Probably less, I think, because I think a few of the cities ended up getting cancelled, probably because of low ticket sales, I imagine. And so maybe they'll film some of that stuff and release it, because right now, the Control Narrative content barrel is looking a bit barren. But as well as that, it looks like some of the roster members are already on to different things. And there's obviously the main one being Killer Cross, who has completely just left Control Your Narrative, is doing nothing to do with them, and just gone straight back to the WWE. Triple H obviously took back over the WWE. Triple H loved Karrion Kross in NXT. And the same day that it was rumored that Cross was in talks, he returned. Apparently the negotiations happened very quickly. So seemingly Cross was very happy to leave his situation in Control Your Narrative and return to WWE, where he's like a main eventer now. So he has instantly upgraded himself. And of course he took Scarlett with him, who never actually wrestled in Control Your Narrative, so she clearly knew what was best for her. I mean, there isn't much of women's division on Control Your Narrative. Their main woman is meant to be Sarah Rowe. And hey, she just appeared on SmackDown a couple nights ago too. It's not confirmed if that's a return, but it very well could be, and they could just get her and the Riot Squad like going again with her and Liv or something. It's very possible with Triple H's regime. I think anyone is going to be open to returning to the WWE now Triple H is back. I think all these members on the roster of Control Your Narrative who constantly complain about their booking in WWE will happily go back if they're given a bag by Triple H. Just look at Killer Cross. But as well as this, it's looking like some other talent are at risk of leaving Control Your Narrative. Weston Blake just appeared on the AEW Dark tapings. It's unknown if he'll get signed. Maybe he'll join the Trustbusters to make the even more most random faction of all time. But Weston Blake, yes, he appeared on AEW TV. Well, not TV, YouTube, you get the idea. And EC3 is appearing at NWA 74. He is wrestling Mims on night 1, and I'm very excited for that. I always said from the start that EC3 would be fantastic for the NWA and a great get for them, and I think he'll do really well there if he's going to wrestle there more. And that's the thing, he's literally like the guy, the face of Control Your Narrative, and he's just wrestling someplace else now. So what does the future hold, really, for Control Your Narrative? They have this tour coming up. Is this tour literally just the farewell tour? The thing I can't do is say how much money Control Your Narrative is making or losing. I have no knowledge of that, nor would I be able to at all calculate that. But right now, they're obviously not releasing shows. They're not doing like any pay-per-views. So there's no buy numbers for any shows. There's nothing being bought. They have maybe the worst merch line I've ever seen. So there's no way anyone is buying that, because I don't think I'll ever see someone rocking a "We Live in a Society" and an "Effing Sucks" shirt. Like, I will probably never see that in my lifetime. That gives the question, is Control Your Narrative dying? And I think it's very premature to say it's dying, especially not knowing what the financial status is, and just because one person's officially left and their face of the company is wrestling for another company. That doesn't necessarily mean EC3's mind is elsewhere at all. And the question is, people are asking, how long can CYN last? That's the main question. But I think the real question should be, how long should Control Your Narrative last? Because to me, if Control Your Narrative finished this year and was a short-term promotion, then overall, I think it would have been a success, if I'm honest. Because let's face it, the message of Control Your Narrative is that it's a promotion full of underutilized guys. The focus shouldn't be on EC3, Adam Scherr, Aries, or anyone like that, though. It should be on the fact that, hey, we were underutilized and we want to make sure that these young guys on our roster don't suffer that. People like Jake Logan, Weston Blake, all these other guys on their roster that are super hyped up. It should be because of Control Your Narrative that these guys are getting signed on to bigger promotions. This should be a stepping stone promotion, and Control Your Narrative should exist to help these younger guys. And EC3 and Adam Scherr should be building them up, I think. I think that'd be a great message to send and a great purpose for Control Your Narrative. And as well, if Control Your Narrative just was to shut down this year, I think they've made a mark on the wrestling community. I really do think that. My mindset with wrestling has always been, sure, the segment might have been good or bad, the storyline might have been good or bad, the match might have been good or bad, but honestly, I think the main thing in wrestling is making things memorable. Look back at the Kane, Lita, and Gene Snitsky storyline. The one where he said, "It wasn't me." We all remember it as being absolutely dreadful, and it was, but the key word was that we all remember it. It was memorable. They made a memorable moment, and if Control Your Narrative was to shut down this year, then Control Your Narrative was a memorable, weird promotion that existed for 1 year, and one that we'd all look back on in a couple of years' time and be like, hey, that existed, that was a weird time in wrestling, but it was memorable, and they made a mark on the community and something to look back on. If they run for another few years, it's just going to be sad. It's just going to be sad. In a way, it's kind of what happened to Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling running now isn't necessarily sad, because they're in quite a comfortable place with finances and being able to run shows. But how many things in Impact do you remember compared to moments in TNA that stick in your mind and you think that was awesome and that was a time that I look back on fondly? Not many. Obviously, I'm not saying we're all going to look back on Control Your Narrative fondly, but I think it's better to look back on it as a one-year promotion and something that just existed for a bit and we all laughed at and had a good time with, rather than a promotion that dragged out for years, never changed, and was just a sad existence in the wrestling community. Is Control Your Narrative dying? Maybe. It could be. I really think there is a good chance it could be and maybe wrapping up. But if it's not, I also wouldn't be surprised. Either way, that's it for me from this video. I've still got some Control Your Narrative content to come. I'm going to be slowly finishing up with it for now. Obviously, I'll come back to Control Your Narrative in the future. But in the short term, I've got a couple more videos coming out on Control Your Narrative. And then we'll probably take a bit of a break from covering it all the time. But either way, that's it from me. Like the video if you did enjoy. I'll see you all soon. Goodbye and keep on rolling.